The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
This is the moment Iran struck Tel Aviv in a series of retaliatory strikes early Saturday. The conflict between the longtime foes has escalated dramatically and is now heading into its third night. As waves of Iranian missiles rain down, some made it through Israel's air defense systems, smashing into homes, injuring dozens.
These were the skies over Tel Aviv last night. Iron Dome rockets fired to intercept Iranian missiles. More than 150 of them in all fired at Israel, and some got through. A bombardment on a scale Israel has rarely felt. The numbers vast, the missiles advanced, the damage devastating.
The new waves of attacks between Israel and Iran, the deaths and destruction mounting on both sides, and today's scheduled negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, also a casualty.
Iran's barrage of dozens of missiles and drones seen soaring over Jordan towards Israel.
Oh my God.
And flying over Jerusalem.
To combat Iran's barrage of missiles and drones, Israel needs more than its much-vaunted Iron Dome defense system.
Israel struck at least 2 oil refineries as it widens its target list beyond military and nuclear facilities.
Israel's Iron Dome pummeled. Bombarded by Iranian missiles, some punching through. Wave after wave, retaliation strikes targeting Israeli military sites, but also landing direct hits on densely populated areas of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem.
Welcome back to the Trumpet Daily Show. This is Richard Palmer standing in for your regular host, Mr. Stephen Flurry. It's been a dramatic weekend with some of that footage coming out of Israel, out of Iran, and I think it's there's a lot of kind of mixed emotions. In some ways, it's exciting seeing Israel being able to take care of the problem in Iran and everything that they've been able to accomplish over the weekend. It's tragic though as well to see that footage and just even to sit here again watching that this morning or now. Buildings with families being hit by these terrifying ballistic missiles. I mean, like, I've done math with missiles when working on articles about them, and I've researched their speed, but just then seeing what that speed looks like as these ballistic missiles that are basically kind of coming down from outer space, or at least very up on the edge of the upper atmosphere and smashing into these towers full of people. And it's tragic. I think the latest pictures I saw were from Petach Teva, which is it's close to Tel Aviv, and I was there last time I was in Israel. Well, I guess it was the time before last. I was kind of picking up equipment and things in Petach Teva. It is tragic, and it's pretty sobering as well to see that footage, those attacks. I mean, it's like science fiction warfare. I just remember reading about that we would eventually see these kind of weapons, and now this is on our nightly news. Missiles, and then other rockets trying to intercept these missiles, or other missiles intercepting these missiles. And there's a lot to unpack, a lot to talk about on today's show. But I think, maybe I'll start just by talking about the boldness of Israel here. And they've done a lot. They've had these attacks come in. They've taken out a lot of very significant nuclear program infrastructure, oil infrastructure, military infrastructure. There's a lot of people dead. I've got a kind of a list here. Iran's second in command under Khomeini, the IRGC, Iran Revolutionary Guards commander-in-chief, is dead. Close aide to Khomeini, Armed Forces Deputy Commander-in-Chief, Deputy Intelligence Chief, senior scientists on Iran's nuclear program. I think it was 10 this morning, but that's often rising. And as tragic and as dramatic as a lot of those scenes over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Haifa, as tragic as they are, Iranian damage has been it's been relatively limited. It's not been the massive destruction that many have feared. I think the latest figures, again, this may well be a few hours out of date now, but as of this morning, 24 killed, hundreds injured, with the Israeli Air Force stopping a lot coming over, with the Iron Dome and David Sling and these various different layers of missile defense. And it reminds me of some of what we saw during Donald Trump's first term, where he would do things, where he took out Qasem Soleimani, for example, and all the kind of liberal critics were like, well, it's going to be the end of the world. It's going to start World War III, and there'll be all of these massive negative consequences, and they didn't happen. And it's a bit like that with Israel. It's not been they've taken on Iran, and it's not been the mass kind of casualty event that many people feared that it could be. I wanted to quote a bit from the morning brief this morning. This is from Mr. Joel Hilliker, who's over there in Jerusalem, and it gives a great on-the-ground perspective of what Israelis are feeling going through all of this. He says, last night a group of us were outside conversing near a street. A passing rabbi invited himself to join us. He proudly called Israel's offensive against Iran the greatest manifestation of God's power since the Exodus. So they're feeling pretty positive about how this has all gone. And, well, as the morning brief continues, it's easy to see why Israelis would think this way. The damage their nation has inflicted over the past 3.5 days is stunning. In a series of precise strikes, Israel has significantly disrupted Iran's military and nuclear capabilities. It has crippled Iran's air defenses and missile production and killed over 20 senior military commanders. It says 6 nuclear scientists here. I think that death toll just keeps going up. It says, even more, Israel has humiliated the region's biggest bully. For decades, the revolutionary regime of Iran has threatened the Jewish state and has defied the international community. Global consensus has been that directly confronting the Islamic Republic would risk escalation, economic fallout, geopolitical entanglement, and other unintended consequences. Instead, it must be treated respectfully, coaxed into civility through negotiation and compromise. Yet Iran has remained pushy and continued to promote extremism, broadcast anti-Semitism, underwrite terrorism, and pursue nuclear capability. Israel has finally had enough. It is amazing what action can accomplish that words cannot. Donald Trump is trying to leverage Israel's military success to coerce Iran back into negotiations, which were otherwise feckless and defunct. And that's a big lesson of all of this. And the power of action. Israel just took action. So I think there's so many different things. It's hard to know where to start to talk about from everything that is happening here. And I thought, well, perhaps one logical place to start is to talk about Bible prophecy and what is prophesied to happen to Iran, and to take a step back and look at the role that Iran is going to play in Bible prophecy, because this is something that Trumpet Editor-in-Chief Gerald Flurry has had a lot to say about. This is, Sam dug this out for me, an early Key of David all the way back from the 1990s. I think this is from 1993. Let me look through my notes. I've covered up. There we go. This is clip 1.
So the king of the south must arise after Daniel was revealed. These verses point to a king of the south that is yet future, and I believe all indications point to radical Islam headed by Iran as this king. The king of the north is guided by a great religion, and it appears the king of the south is also. That is probably the only way they can unite anyhow. That is religion bringing them together.
Probably could have set that up a little bit better, but that's a critical clip that from Mr. Flurry, and making the point that he's talked about Iran for a long, long time. And he's talked about Iran fulfilling the prophesied role from Daniel 11 and verse 40, where it says, at the time of the end. So it's an end time prophecy. Shortly before Jesus Christ is about to return, there will be a king of the south and the king of the north. At the time of the end. And there's so much to show that we're at the time of the end. Jesus Christ himself talked about mankind not being saved alive, mankind having the ability to wipe himself out. And we've reached that. Mankind has the ability to wipe himself out, and all of this revolves around nuclear weapons. We're in the time of the end. So who are the king of the north? Who are the king of the south? Well, surely God should be revealing that. Surely he should have a servant somewhere on this earth that he reveals that to. And there was Mr. Flurry from 1993 talking about, well, Iran is going to play this role. The time of the end, shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind. And the king of the north, you can put Daniel 11 alongside lots of other prophecies, and you can see that this king of the north is referring to this European power. This power that is led by a woman or a false church that continually rises and falls. And so it's going to have a strong religious element. And he was saying, well, it makes sense that the king of the south would have that strong religious element as well. It's going to be radical Islam led by Iran. And he was talking about that all the way back in 1993 was that Key of David. And, I was maybe a bit too early. That might be a bit too early for me to remember. But I do remember growing up, seeing the Key of David as a kid, seeing Mr. Flurry talk about Iran a lot. And for whatever reason, it left quite a impression on me that Mr. Flurry would always be talking about Iran on the Key of David. And then just on the nightly news, because back in the 90s, a lot of families, we'd watch the news in the evening every day, or just driving around and hearing the news in the car. And I felt like they'd always be talking about Iraq. This is after the first Gulf War, but still a lot of talk about Iraq. I think there was some bombings later on in the 90s. You never heard about Iran. And it was almost like these two different worlds. Mr. Flurry was always talking about Iran. And then I'd turn on the news, or my parents would, and you'd hear the news, and it was always talking about Iraq. And I don't think I've even heard about Iran on the nightly news. Iraq was the big danger. Iraq was the country we really needed to fear. And I mean, they didn't use the term king of the south, but if they were using that language, that's the way the BBC and all of the news commentators would have talked about it. And it's so clear that, well, here we are, and it's Iran that is dominating the news, and Iraq, ultimately America went in there, took care of Saddam Hussein, but also then just paved the way for Iran to take that over and make Iran even more dominant. Here's another clip talking from this Key of David, where Mr. Flurry is talking about this king of the south.
Crucial prophecies are being fulfilled right now. Very crucial prophecies, and the kind of prophecies that are going to affect your personal life, no matter where you live on this earth. The king of the south could rule Iraq or Iran or both countries, but it is looking more now like Iran may produce this king. It looks very much like the end-time king of the south will rule the radical Islamists. Iran is a natural leader for many of them today. You can see that just by reading your newspapers.
So now what do we see? He was talking about, well, it looks like the king of the south, they could rule both. And Iran does rule both. And saying, well, it looks like it's very much going to be Iran. I also thought it was fascinating just looking through the transcript of that Key of David. Mr. Flurry spent most of that Key of David talking about Iran getting the nuclear bomb and efforts that Iran was putting forwards to get the nuclear bomb. And I think back then in the early 90s, those efforts revolved more around getting their hands on a kind of a Soviet weapon as the Soviet Union was falling apart, rather than having their own fully developed weapon system, or getting one from Pakistan or North Korea. I can't remember if North Korea had the bomb back then, but kind of getting one that way from someone else rather than having their homegrown nuclear program. But they've been working on having a nuclear bomb for a long, long time. And Mr. Flurry spent a lot of that Key of David talking about the danger of Iran having a nuclear bomb. So, what's going to happen now? Well, this can tell us, I think, and give us some important guidance as to what happens next in the Middle East. Is Israel going to destroy Iran? Well, no. Iran is going to keep going in some fashion. Maybe this will be a setback. Maybe this will be an absolutely massive setback. But Iran is still going to fulfill this role as the king of the South. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is aiming very big. This was a clip, or I think he gave this on Friday, sometime around Friday night, where he tried to reach out to the Iranian people. This is clip 4.
Tonight I wish to speak to you, the proud people of Iran. We're in the midst of one of the greatest military operations in history, Operation Rising Lion. The Islamic regime, which has oppressed you for nearly 50 years, threatens to destroy my country, the State of Israel. The objective of Israel's military operation is to remove this threat, both the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat to Israel. And as we achieve our objectives, we're also clearing the path for you to achieve your objective, which is freedom. In the past 24 hours, we've taken out top military commanders, senior nuclear scientists, the Islamic regime's most significant enrichment facility, and a large portion of its ballistic missile arsenal. More is on the way. The regime doesn't know what hit them. They don't know what will hit them. The nation of Iran and the nation of Israel have been true friends since the days of Cyrus the Great. And the time has come for you to unite around your flag and your historic legacy by standing up for your freedom from an evil and oppressive regime. It has never been weaker. This is your opportunity to stand up and let your voices be heard. Woman, life, freedom. Zan, Zandegi, Azadi. As I said yesterday and many times before, Israel's fight is not with you. It's not with you, the brave people of Iran, whom we respect and admire. Our fight is with our common enemy, a murderous regime that both oppresses you and impoverishes you. Brave people of Iran, your light will defeat the darkness. I am with you. The people of Israel are with you.
So that was his message to the people of Iran. And I thought it was really interesting the way he brought up Cyrus and going back to the Bible history there of Israel and Persia. But he's aiming big. He's trying to overthrow the Iranian state, bring about regime change, which, we don't know all of the details of how Bible prophecy is going to work out, but they are going to remain the king of the South, and it's not Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu that takes the king of the South down, that takes Iran down. And like I said, maybe this is a major setback. Maybe you could even have some kind of regime change, slightly different leaders. I saw someone speculating, maybe you have Khomeini out and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad comes in or something like that. There's lots of ways God can fulfill his prophecy, but fundamentally, Israel isn't the one that will bring down the king of the South. That's not how the king of the South ends. Daniel 11 and verse 40 spells this out. At the time of the end shall the king of the South push at him, and the king of the North shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and shall enter into the countries and overflow and pass over. It's the king of the North, this European beast power, this European religious empire. They're the ones that finally deal with the king of the North. There's a prophecy, or the king of the South, sorry. There's a prophecy there that it's not the United States that does the killer blow. It's not Israel. Ultimately, it's going to be the king of the North that does this. It's a violent attack. They come against him like a whirlwind. And I've got a few quotes from the King of the South prophecy here. Mr. Flurry, or the King of the South booklet. Mr. Flurry talks about just the violence implied in this word, push, meaning to strike with the horn. It's a violent push that Iran produces against the King of the North. Now, this how much capability do they have to have this push? They could still be weakened and have this push. I mean, they could be in a weakened state and get a hold of a nuclear weapon and have a pretty violent push. In that book, Mr. Flurry writes, the push no doubt revolves around Jerusalem and biblical Judah, called Israel today, just as the clashes in the end times of the crusade did. That city is the third most holy city in the Islamic world. Pope John Paul II spoke publicly of moving the Roman Catholic headquarters there. These two great powers and powerful religions both passionately desired Jerusalem. In 1990, nobody could have imagined two world powers emerging from the Middle East and Europe. But God knew exactly what would happen. Nobody but God could have inspired these prophecies. Everyone can see these two great powers today. The most precious jewel of Iran's plan is to conquer Jerusalem. This would then galvanize more of the Islamic world behind Iran and spread Muslim influence to many countries outside of the Middle East. It could lead to dangerous rioting and terror in Europe, Asia, and even America. So there'll be a violent push revolving around Jerusalem that is still going to come. That's still in the future. Now, Daniel 11 does kind of imply a certain change in direction from what we've seen from Iran, and I think we've seen a lot of that already. It goes on to list all the countries that the King of the North is going to conquer. And the implication is, well, the King of the North comes in and they conquer Iran and these other countries. And they're listed in verse 42, the land of Egypt shall not escape. Verse 43, he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his step. So the King of the North conquers Iran and Egypt and Libya and Ethiopia. The implication being that they conquer these other countries because they're aligned with the King of the South. They're allied with Iran. And that's not really the case right now. And Egypt is the power that's really emphasized here. Mr. Flurry points out in the King of the South booklet that Egypt is the one that even kind of brings Libya and Ethiopia around into that King of the South orbit. And Egypt is not in the Iranian camp at the moment. A lot of Iran's efforts over the last few years, they've focused on Syria and Lebanon and these countries to the north of Israel. And so they're kind of getting at the Mediterranean Sea that way, through Iraq and then Syria and then also Lebanon. And they can get at Israel, they can get at the Mediterranean Sea. But here we have a bit of a change in focus where they focus on Egypt. And Egypt comes into their camp. And so you could see this conflict that's going on right now playing a role in that happening. That if Israel comes in, they don't completely take care of Iran. They're then smoldering even more than ever with resentment, and they start working in other ways to get at Israel, and they start working with Egypt and Libya and Ethiopia. And Mr. Flurry, what he says in the King of the South, this prophecy about Libya and Ethiopia unlocks Iran's military strategy. The King of the South is going to push at the King of the North, probably by brandishing its power over the Mediterranean Red Sea trade route. It's already doing this with the Houthis, but it's like, well, if we're going to really put the pressure on Europe, we need more than just the Red Sea. We need to start attacking Europe in the Mediterranean Sea as well. Let's go after Egypt. Let's go after Libya. But you could see what's happening playing into that change in direction. But I think several of these bits of news, you can see how Iran is going to survive this. There's been a lot of talk about this Fodor underground power station, power station, nuclear. It's not a power station. It's for enriching uranium. It's for making nuclear bombs. It's not for making nuclear power. But they've got this underground section at the Natanz nuclear site. The UN said there was no indication of a physical attack on the underground section of this Natanz uranium enrichment site. They says, well, there might have been a loss of power that might have done some damage to these centrifuges. They've got an underground area, which Iran says could hold 50,000 centrifuges, and it's buried deep into a mountain. And a lot of the experts say, well, Israel doesn't have the capability to reach that. So are they going to have parts of their nuclear program continue? I mean, yep, I'm sure Israel's done a lot of damage, and they've taken out probably a lot of ballistic missile sites, and maybe a lot to do with taking a nuclear weapon and putting it on a rocket that can be delivered somewhere. But are you going to have, deep under the mountain, some things in that nuclear program survive for Iran to continue with? And you're starting to see Iran, well, at least there have been a few pieces of news today where Iran is looking to have a ceasefire, to end the war. This was from the Telegraph. Iran has been frantically signaling that it wants to end its escalating conflict with Israel and resume nuclear talks, according to officials. Tehran has been sending urgent messages that it would be open to returning to the negotiation table if the US doesn't join in the attacks. while telling Israel it's in both sides' interest to restrain the violence, sources told the Wall Street Journal. That was the Wall Street Journal or the Telegraph writing on that. And then the Telegraph had their own thing from Reuters. Iran has asked Donald Trump via intermediaries to press Israel to agree to a ceasefire. The news agency cited 2 Iranian and 3 regional sources who said Iran had asked Oman, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia to make the request to the American president. Iran is willing to be flexible in the nuclear talks if a ceasefire is reached, one of the Iranian sources said. So they're reaching out. They're kind of trying to scream out through all their back-channel diplomacies. Make peace. We're willing to talk, President Trump. And from what we've seen in the past, he is willing to have those kind of conversations. He's willing to talk. I'm just trying to see if we've got... this is clip 5. He talked about that earlier today, I think it was.
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens.
Sometimes they have to fight it out, but he said, well, I hope there's going to be a deal. Not, I hope that Israel takes care of the problem completely, and I hope that Iran is finished off through this attack, but instead, well, I hope there's a deal. So that's disappointing to see, and maybe we'll see then America force there to be some kind of a ceasefire, some kind of a treaty that leaves Iran in place as the king of the South. Peter Wildford, he had an article talking about this Fordo nuclear power plant, or this nuclear research station. He says that the Fordo paradox, he says, will define the coming crisis. The U.S. possesses the military capacity to destroy Fordo, this place at Natanz, buried in a mountain. America has the military capacity to destroy it, but lacks the political will, while Israel has the will, but not the capability. This fundamental misalignment between America's power and Israel's urgency explains why we're watching not just another round of strikes, but potentially the first act in nuclear proliferation's next wave. This is the Fordo paradox. The U.S. can destroy Fordo, while Israel cannot. Israel wants Fordo destroyed, while the U.S. does not. The U.S. is willing to accept Iran as a threshold nuclear state to avoid another Middle East entanglement and focus on China. So Israel is willing to confront this, but America isn't. And Israel can do a lot on its own, but it seems like at least there's this one thing it needs America's help with. And that help is not forthcoming. And we had an article, I should have a look, see if it's up there on our website yet. Some of the guys over in Jerusalem were putting together an article. Israel's D-Day against Iran. Giving an update on all the different things that have happened over the weekend. But for this conclusion, they pulled out some great quotes from the King of the South that really get to the core of why this problem isn't dealt with. And, well, I'll just read them. It says in Leviticus 26 and verse 19, God warned that if our people descended into abject sin, he would break the pride of our power. And so he has. He even says that little Israel has more military might than Iran, but fears to use it. Well, great, good for them. They're using some of it, but how long are they going to use it? The same is the case with Britain, and certainly that is true of America. Our nations fear to use their power because of our sins. The pride of our power has been broken. And this article says, over the past 4 days, Israel has displayed impressive courage and military might. That is truly commendable. However, Bible prophecy says the pride of its power will not return without national repentance. And then our ultimate success will be determined by our relationship with God. If God is for us, we cannot lose. But if God is against us, we cannot win. This is from the King of the South. And Bible prophecy reiterates that God is against us and is cursing us. And maybe God is behind allowing some kind of a reprieve for Israel, behind these attacks to a certain extent. But God isn't bringing peace and security for Israel and America now. He's working to bring about repentance. And without that repentance, well, that's what it says in the article. Without repentance, Israel can only win a partial victory. To truly eliminate the Iranian nuclear threat, Israel does not need America. It needs God. And that's what both these powers need. But really, we're seeing a lack of will from America. They're not willing to help completely deal with the problem. And Britain, I think this has been one of the most shameful weeks for a long time in British history. I mean, it is abysmal what the British government has been doing, where you look at the tremendous courage Israel is displaying in dealing with one of the biggest problems to peace and security, the biggest threats to peace and security, the biggest threats to humanity as a whole. When you look at Iran's deranged nuclear program, their twisted messianic beliefs about it, that it's going to bring about the return of the Mahdi if they can cause global chaos. Israel is doing the globe a favor. I mean, yeah, it's in their interest too, but it helps everyone. And what is Britain doing? And Canada and Australia and New Zealand? We're putting sanctions on Israel. We're punishing Israel. Now, we did that before the Iranian attack. But I mean, they're dealing with Hamas. They're dealing with this evil group, and we put sanctions on them. We've put sanctions on the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. So he's not allowed to visit. These men aren't allowed to visit Britain anymore. And they're courageous leaders. I'm sure they've got their faults, but they're supporting Benjamin Netanyahu and dealing with a lot of very evil people and very evil groups, and they're banned from visiting Britain, and they've got all of their accounts frozen for, quote, inciting violence against the Palestinian people. I mean, Marco Rubio pointed out on Twitter, he told Britain, do not forget who the real enemy is. And yeah, we have forgotten. Telegraph pointed out these two ministers are not being targeted for something they've done, but for what they've said. We don't like some of their strong rhetoric against Hamas. You know, these people that murdered Jewish babies, well, they're a bit harsh in how they talk about them. So we're going to put sanctions on them. While Israel goes and fights the enemies of humanity. Itamar Ben-Gvir, he responded by comparing Britain to Neville Chamberlain. I mean, I think he's being too mild there. Like, at least Chamberlain was horribly... I made this point on Trumpet World on Friday, the week in review as well. But, okay, like, Chamberlain was horribly wrong to try and compromise with Hitler. But at least he was on the right side. Like, at least he genuinely believed Hitler was a bad guy. I mean, these leaders in Britain, they would be... If you followed the standards of the current British government, we'd be placing sanctions on Winston Churchill because he said mean things about the Nazis. I mean, it's utterly abysmal what we're doing, and it's desperately broken will in Britain. United States, I don't think is as broken, but still, not wanting to. President Trump isn't saying let's deal with Iran now. He's still saying, well, I hope there's a deal. And Britain and America have kind of stayed out of the fight. There was talk of Britain initially really distancing itself from Israel. Even the United States has been pretty quick to say, well, we don't want to have anything to do with Israel, we're not involved in the war. Now, President Trump has been a bit stronger, and I think America has genuinely done some things to help Israel defend itself and to shoot down some of these missiles, and all of that is commendable. But there's broken will behind that. Not dealing with Iran. Not dealing with the King of the South. And so, according to Bible prophecy, the King of the South is still going to be there, and it's going to take Europe, and it's going to take this much larger strike to deal with them. Well, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk about a few other aspects of this important news story going on in the Middle East. We'll be right back.
Herbert W. Armstrong long forecast the arrival of a military superpower in Europe. In a world where European nations can't rely on the United States, one in which they fear Russia and face the constant threat of radical terror, their only hope of survival is to band together. This is what we see happening, and what we see happening was prophesied in your Bible. Request Germany and the Holy Roman Empire to learn about the history of Germany and the Holy Roman Empire, and to understand where the events in Europe today are leading. 3,000 years ago, the prophet Daniel explained that at the time of the end, radical Islam would push against Europe. That time is now. We are witnessing the first manifestations of this Islamist push against Europe, and it's leading to a spectacular clash between these two prophesied kings, the King of the North and the King of the South. What does the Bible say about the identity of these two kings? What about the end time? Will everyone be affected by these events? Request our two booklets, The King of the South and Germany and the Holy Roman Empire. To learn more, please visit thetrumpet.com.
Every other country celebrates their victories. It's about time America did too. That's what we're doing tonight. 250 years later, America stands tall, America stands proud, and America stands free. We're the hottest country in the world right now.
Welcome back to the Trumpet Daily Show. I thought I'd just touch on another subject. I wanted to make sure I slotted in just at the start of the second half before we go back to talking about what's going on in Israel. There's been a lot of commentary over the weekend about America holding this great military parade with, you had the big No Kings protest going on at the same time with 200 progressive groups funding this, claiming millions are taken to the streets across the country, protesting on this No Kings movement, and basically trying to spread the narrative that what President Trump was doing here with this speech in Washington, D.C. is dictatorial because he's celebrating the military. You had, I think, also related to that, those assassinations in Minnesota, just a shocking story there, where you had a Democratic state representative killed, where she was breaking with the Democrats, it looked like, and so you have more political violence spurred by a lot of this hatred to President Trump. So, a pretty shocking, sobering story from the United States. But I wanted to let you know about a military event going on Sunday that all of this news coverage should have been devoted to, and should have had the attention that was given to that American military parade. George, you can play clip 6.
Germany is observing its first nationwide Veterans Day this weekend, honouring over 10 million service members, past and present. It has been. Well, leaders like Defence Minister Boris Pistorius have praised the initiative as long overdue appreciation. Peace activists have called it militarism in its purest form.
Given Germany's role in the Second World War, having a strong military power was basically off limits for decades. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine changed the way Germans think about their Bundeswehr.
I thought it was a great little broadcast there. I mean, where was the focus on that? I mean, unless you're getting our Trumpet morning brief, I wonder if you even heard about that. And I quoted from that at the start of the show. You can sign up for that on our website, thetrumpet.com. We have the ad over the break for the King of the South, Germany and the Holy Roman Empire. You can get all of that material at thetrumpet.com as well. We're very happy to send that out to you. And the Trumpet morning brief we aim to kind of give you, hey, these are you're waking up in the morning. We'll probably get it out a little bit late for that, certainly in the UK. But here's what you need to know. Here are the important events that are going on. But that's the military parade that should have gotten the world's attention. Germany holding its first ever Veterans Day celebration. And it's a major step in this nation, rehabilitating its army, rehabilitating its military. When the Federal Republic of Germany got started, who were the veterans? The veterans were literal Nazis. So, of course, they don't have a Veterans Day. And at Yalta, Churchill, Roosevelt, they signed this document where they said they would destroy German militarism. So we're going to get rid of even this whole culture that really celebrates its military, because in the run-up to World War II, the run-up to World War I, you have this militarism where the military is just celebrated. And now they're bringing that back. They're saying, well, no, we need to celebrate our army again. The army is at the center of society, where it is visible, present, and supported. That's what the defense minister said. The Bundestag president, Julia Klöckner, she said, this day creates something that has been missing for a long time. Public visibility, recognition, and respect for all those who've served in the country's armed forces. We need to celebrate the German military again. And they want to enlist another 50, 60,000 soldiers. And to do that, they need to make these changes. You need to make, if Germany's going to have a big army and they're going to get all these volunteers to serve in it and not get there by conscription, and I think they'll probably end up mixing the two and bringing in some conscription, but if they want to get a lot of volunteers, they need to put the army up on a pedestal and celebrate it more. But we're going down the same path. And I think the difference when you look at Germany and you look at what was going on in America over the weekend is the history. Look at the history of the American army versus the German army. And I'm not saying everything the US army has done has always been perfect or always been done perfectly. But in general, the US military has been a force for good in the world and has dealt with tyrants. And yet, they could have done things more effectively. And George, I think, is messing with me by deliberately putting up the revolution. He right at the start there, he had the revolutionary uniforms of the U.S. military on display there. So he's testing how much I would agree with and support the U.S. military by putting the U.S. military of 1775 when they were fighting the British on there. So clearly, I don't agree with everything the U.S. military has done, but in general, a force for good in the world. And you look at what the U.S. military, what the German military has done, and the path that we're going down every time that was really celebrated before. There's a major warning there. The world should have been alarmed at that military event, at Germany celebrating its military again, not the United States. They're the king of the North. They're the power rising up that are going to deal with Iran. And having then had that taste of victory, they're not going to stop with Iran. They're going to enter into the glorious land. They're going to deceitfully come in and take Israel in the Middle East, and then take the other modern nations of Israel. Attack and conquer more countries. And that was what was rising up with their military parade. And another aspect of this, what we saw coming back to the Middle East, is we got a glimpse of the type of war they're going to be fighting. The type of weapons that are going to be used. And it was very much, I thought, a kind of a science fiction war. You've got missiles coming down from space. You've got Israel. It looks almost like World War II kind of dogfighting, except it's not fighter planes trying to shoot down bombers that are trying to drop bombs on cities. Instead, it's missiles flying in from the edge of space, and then other missiles trying to intercept them and zipping around. And Israel, you've got kind of things going on right at the upper atmosphere because these ballistic missiles, they go very high up, and then they come back down again. I think it's easier to hit at the peak when they're not accelerating back down as quickly. So you've got them trying to intercept them in space, trying to intercept them closer to the ground, missiles intercepting missiles. I mean, it doesn't feel that long ago that we were reading about people saying, well, theoretically, the wars of the future could be fought this way. And they're being fought this way right now. And then even the way that Israel went after Iran, like this follows on from what Ukraine did in Russia. Like Ukraine smuggled in drones into Russia. Israel set up entire drone bases within Iran. We're getting a glimpse at what you can do with some of this modern technology, how this technology is shifting warfare. The Wall Street Journal, how Israel's Mossad smuggled drone parts to attack Iran from within. And it talks about how Israel spent months smuggling in drones, kind of part by part, into Iran in suitcases, trucks, shipping containers. Small teams armed with the equipment set up near Iran's air defense emplacements and missile launch sites. And then they were ready to go when Israel's attack took place. They've got these drones not flying into Iran. They're already there. They've got these drone bases set up. Said Mossad brought the quadcopters in through commercial channels, often using unwitting business partners. Agents on the ground would collect the munitions, distribute them to the teams. Israel trained the team leaders in third countries. The teams watched as Iran rolled out missiles, then hit them before they could be erected for launch. Mossad knew the trucks that move the missiles from storage to the launch site were a bottleneck for Iran, which had 4 times as many missiles as trucks. So they're focusing on taking out Iran's trucks that bring the missiles in there. Times of Israel. Israel spent years preparing for the operation against Iran's nuclear and missile program that was launched early Friday morning, a security official told the Times of Israel, including building a drone base inside Iran and smuggling precision weapon systems and commandos into the country. I mean, that is pretty incredible what you're seeing. Mr. Flurry wrote this in an article, AI and the End of Mutually Assured Destruction. He said, "We had better pay attention to what might be the most significant fundamental change in the character of war ever recorded in history. Technological advances are often hyped up, but I believe there are reasons that may not be the case here." And he was talking about artificial intelligence in that case, but a lot of this all kind of goes together. Drones, artificial intelligence. I don't know if AI was particularly used that much in this attack, but these do go kind of hand in hand with AI. Then you can build some intelligence into the drones, and they're less susceptible to having the signals jammed, or can work together more effectively. But you're seeing the weapons of the future being used here. Mr. Flurry talked about this in the Key of David as well, and he talked about this Antiochus type, this leader of the end time king of the north, and the way that he would be into a lot of this technology and use that technology. And this is clip 8.
Verse 9 of chapter 8 in Daniel. Verse 9 says this, "And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land," or Jerusalem. So the main end-time fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy will occur in Europe. That is, this artificial intelligence. And we explain a lot about what's going to happen in Europe in our book on the Holy Roman Empire. Now, if you look at Antiochus here, anciently it shows that he had an abnormal interest in technology. Now, this is a type. This is from a book that's only for the end time. 2 verses tell you that in Daniel 12, verses 4 and 9. Antiochus anciently shows that he had an abnormal interest in technology. Polybius Histories, the historian, relates that Antiochus often wandered in the city streets, holding forth at length and discussing technical matters with the molders and other craftsmen. The men fulfilling the roles of this modern Antiochus have similar interest in much more modern technologies. It's just the way Antiochus is, and this Antiochus is, well, he's controlled by an evil spirit. The main evil spirit in this universe. And we need to think about that. If we believe the Bible, and if we don't believe it, well, it's still going to come true. And we're going to all see that, and we can see it right now. Prophecy is being fulfilled like never before on this earth. And I hope that we can help you understand that. But going on, it says, quoting this historian, holding forth at length and discussing technical matters with molders and other craftsmen. The men fulfilling the roles of the modern Antiochus, see, that have the modern technology.
He has an unusual interest in that modern technology. He'll be paying close attention to what Israel just did and what Ukraine just did. And we had an article on our website. I think we'll have an expanded version in the upcoming Trumpet print from Joshua Michels that talks about this, and even the way that Germany's been paying very close attention to the Ukraine war. And they've been, well, a whole lot of nations all around the world have been paying a close attention to that and how technology is being used. And you think America could be vulnerable to something like this when you see how much has come across the border? Or other countries, or China buying up farmland, other countries buying up factories. Could you start just manufacturing drones, setting up a drone base within the United States? And do we live in an evil world where foreign powers actually do plan this kind of thing and look for ways they can use new technology to strike by surprise and take other nations down? Well, the Bible tells us Satan is the god of this world. Well, if we're going to believe the Bible, then we live in a world where nations aren't just trying to cooperate and get along and just kind of have a quiet life. I mean, sometimes that's what we may want, but that's not the world that we live in. There are nations that will be planning to use this technology against America right now. I'll just play, this is just one more clip from Mr. Flurry on that Key of David talking about some of this technology. This is clip 10.
Just the word sentences itself, that means something twisted or fraud. or dark and twisted. That's what it means. They're defining AI. And the Bible is defining it essentially the same way. And even more effectively, I think, telling you how deadly this is, and yet they are racing to use it in their military so they can guide robots with nuclear bombs and fly these nuclear bombs all over the earth in drones. And they can knock out the technology of their enemy, and where they can't even use their nuclear bombs or their other dangerous ingredients there. Germany's Luftwaffe is experimenting with drone swarms and investing in artificial intelligence solutions for controlling German drones and destroying enemy drones. They're working to overcome the Cold War mutually assured destruction, which means they knew that, well, we'll just destroy each other so there's nothing we can do, and they didn't use their nuclear bombs. But here, now you might be able to knock out the other guy's technology, and he can't even fire his missiles. This is dangerously evil, the way we're talking about it here in prophecy. But they can send these things all over the world, and let me tell you, Germany is ahead of America in this field.
You look at what we saw in Ukraine and then what we saw in Israel. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily being used for evil, but it's being used exactly the way Mr. Fleury talked about, drones to take out nuclear programs. In Ukraine, going in there, taking out Russia's nuclear bombers. In Israel, or in Iran, Israel using it to try and take out Iran's ballistic missiles, trying to take out their nuclear program. It's exactly what Mr. Fleury is talking about. And this could be launched against the United States. Ezekiel 7 and verse 14 talks about they've blown the trumpet to make ready, but none goes to the battle. So I think that's another important takeaway to see all this military hardware being used. Well, I have so much more I wanted to talk about in just like 2 minutes. I think you see the virtues of action with Israel stepping up and taking action. I think that's a powerful lesson to learn from this. You see Israel acting like a lion. It's called Operation Rising Lion. I had some quotes that I was going to bring you that I'm just not going to have time from a Royal Vision article. If you have access to that, January 2019, the Lion of the Tribe of Judah. Mr. Fleury has an article talking about how we need to attack like a lion. You know, we need to be able to overcome like a lion, have that lion-like boldness, and we can even learn from the Jews in that regard. And that Jesus Christ exhibited this same quality to an even higher degree. And we can learn from that boldness that Israel, you know, they deal with Iran. A lot of people said, you try and deal with Iran, it's going to be the end of the world. And they were very successful at it. And that's an incredible lesson right there. I think also, though, from this story, you see the importance of dealing with a problem 100%. Not mostly destroying an enemy or partially destroying an enemy. In the How to Be an Overcomer booklet, Mr. Fleury wrote, our problems always try to come back. God instructs us to destroy that old man so completely that he doesn't have the will to come back. If you deal with a problem lightly and return to your business, it will come right back. You'll be dealing with the same problem year after year. And a big enough problem will destroy your successes, as we've seen happen to so many of God's people. That's what we're seeing happen. Israel are dealing with Iran, and maybe they'll mostly deal with Iran or partly deal with Iran. But because they don't deal with it all of the way, there's some still horrible curses coming. There's a big push revolving around Jerusalem, a lot of destruction coming because of that. But ultimately, God is still in command, and he's using this, even Israel's weakness, to work out a plan where Iran will play a role in bringing the world to repentance and bringing the world back to him. Well, that is sadly all that we have time for in this fastest moving hour of broadcasting. You can email the show at letters@thetrumpet.com. We'd be very happy to hear from you. I think Mr. Stephen Fleury will be likely back tomorrow, so please do tune in, same time, same place, for the Trumpet Daily Radio Show. Trumpet Daily Show as it is now, as a video as well as radio.